Andrew. Or Kermit. That's my name. Obviously. Or you cry. Wait a minute, you said that you were trying something new, but this just looks like another PowerPoint. As I put my mouse in the wrong spot. And you're right, to an extent, obviously. Whoop. As I have technical difficulties trying to mouse around my screen. But where you are wrong is that this is different, and we are playing with technology as soon as I have it so I can see it. Okay, and then bip bop. Okay. Haha! Welcome to the magic of green screen. Now, before I get into this proper, we'll say, I kind of wanted to talk more about, I guess, the stream in general and what this particular one kind of represents. I've said it before, I'll say it again. This stream, besides for hopefully entertaining people and just kind of creating content, is for us content creators, something to occupy ourselves with. We can't go out and do our normal things. We're stuck inside, so let's spend our time making and learning. And that's definitely it. This is me experimenting with a new style where instead of me being a little tiny box off to the side and then whatever I'm talking about taking up the other part of the screen, we can just occupy the same space. Does this work? Does it not? I don't know. We're going to find out. That's what this is about right now. And we're giving it a go. And that's kind of also part of this, kind of rolling into our talk last episode about doing panels and presentations and stuff like that, and creative work in general is just do it. I said, hey, here's a thing I know I can talk about. Let me just get it out. Like, I didn't prep this too much. I would not call this up to my normal standards, but I don't think that's what it's about. I think all of us can make things more than we think we can, and we get in our own heads about that of like, well, I can't make that. I'm not good enough, or I don't have the ability, or it's not going to turn out well. Just roll it. Go and do it. Like, at the end of the day, if this turns out poorly, I go, hey, this thing doesn't work, and we keep rolling. And I'm doing this as a way of teaching myself that, but I also want to like be, hey, everybody, that's what's up. Go create things. If you've got stuff that you want to present here, like, please, like, we would shoot one of us a message. I don't know if we have a good contact information yet. I believe last time Forward Progress gave his Twitter account, which may be the best, or shoot up in chat here and I'll take a look. We are always looking for programming. I always like to don my Weird Al from UHF glasses and Hawaiian shirt to play content director of like, hey, we're putting this here and this there, and it's one of the most exciting things doing this stream has been, and being able to work with cool people and wanting to reach out to more people. So, okay, all that out of the way, let's get started to the actual panel here. So, my name is Kermit the Grog, and I'm here today to talk about a beloved video game of mine, God Hand. A strongly worded and passionate verbal letter on why God Hand rules and you should play it. So, let's get some... okay. Let's get some footage rolling here. See, now we're experimenting. So, if you've never seen it before, this is God Hand. It is a 3D beat 'em up released on the PS2 and is genuinely one of my favorite games ever. It's weird. It's quirky. It doesn't really play like anything else. It doesn't really look like anything else, but it's got so much other inspirations in it, and it's just a wonderful, goofy time. This is like level 1. You can see like dudes are just tripping, come out of doors as he punches the heck out of them. And we'll get into more of the specifics of that later. That's not important right now. We're at the top of this. So, but God Hand is kind of one of my... I think it's very indicative of something about me with the things that I enjoy. Is I have a tendency to latch on more to things that I find that are kind of different and quirky that I don't think really got their shot. They don't really have wide popularity for reasons that I go, oh, this is very niche. It's like more people should know about this. This should get more credit for what it is, I think I'm just drawn to that, and I feel like you could view that in a very hipster way, and I'm worried I'm doing that sometimes of like, oh, I'm finding the cool bands before they're actually cool. But I feel like I like to approach it in a way of like, these are my children, and I want to see them succeed and grow and go up in the world. I kind of did that for a long time, even from when I was a kid, of like Psychonauts. I felt like that was a wonderful, quirky, weird game that never really got its due until the last couple of years, when it's like everybody knows it, that it's a big deal. It got that whole sequel funded, like it's now just in the canon of video games. So, and I feel like I've done that with other things, but that's the kind of idea. This is weird, quirky, wonderful thing that I want to share with the world and kind of its place in video games and history. So I'd actually originally learned it from this old meme and a Let's Play, one of the first ones that I ever saw, gosh, probably 2010s, if 2010, if not earlier. Now I don't remember exactly. And I didn't even get to play it. I was just watching somebody play it who was just like relatively good at it, and I'm like, what is going on? This is incredible. I want to play this like right now and check it out. And it was freaking incredible. But okay, enough of me gushing. I know I'm sure I'll have personal things later, but let's get into the actual meat and potatoes of what's going on. So God Hand, as I said, is a 3D beat 'em up game released on the PS2 in 2006. I believe it's like mid to late 2006 in both Japan and America. It hasn't been released anywhere else besides, I think it's got like a PlayStation Network re-release on the PlayStation 3, but not the 4, because I don't know. I'm bummed. It means that I have to plug in my giant brick of a PS3 to play it, which I don't like doing because it sucks, and I never know how to actually charge up my controller. So it's kind of hard to play now. I'm sure you could find an emulator, but the PS3 is probably your best bet because it's gotten a little bit more expensive. So fingers crossed for release. But this game was made by this company right here, Clover Studios, a now defunct company. We'll get into that a little bit more later. But if you don't know about Clover Studios, you probably know about their parent company, or I don't know if that's the right way to put it, sort of Spawn, or their parent, I guess it's parent company, of Capcom, which you probably definitely know from things like Street Fighter and Resident Evil, which will become later important to our story, and Monster Hunter, and all sorts of other video games that are well known, been around for decades, Capcom. So Clover Studios was their, like, if my research was correct, like one of their kind of R&D departments becoming its own studio and kind of doing its own thing. Now, what their most, a lot of their work done is in this series, the Beautiful Joe series. I don't know how many games are at this point. There was a lot of spin-offs. I know there was at least 2 mainline ones, but Beautiful Joe sees you taking control of the titular character Joe, becoming a sort of Sentai superhero in the movies, and fighting in this sort of like 2D stylish action. And the main sort of gimmicks of Beautiful Joe, at least for the ones that I'm aware of and played of the main line, is, as you can see here, the ability to slow down time to dodge attacks or kind of hit harder, and it's not going to be shown here, but he can also speed up time to like punch super like rapid fire fast, and it's a very goofy, quirky, over the top fighting-y game, which if you haven't already heard enough, you're going to hear a bunch for this whole panel because there's a lot of that in here. So the majority of Clover Studios was working on Beautiful Joe and its various sequels and spin-offs. And their other well-known game is Okami. It's actually their other only game besides the Joe series and God Hand. Okami was released in 2006, not that many months before God Hand, and is one of the most gorgeous cel-shaded games where you are playing the goddess Amaterasu, if my knowledge is correct, essentially bringing life back to Japan. It's very much, I don't want to say Legend of Zelda ripoff because that does not give it enough credit, but it's very much in that thing of go around, here's your combat, fight the things, go to the village. There's a lot of side quests, but it is a gorgeous game. There's all sorts of little things to get into. It's really charming. It's a lot of fun to play, especially right now when we're all hunkered down. It's like feels like 2 entire video games stitched together like a game and its sequel. So it's very much a good thing to check out right now. It's been, as opposed to Beautiful Joe and God Hand, it's been re-released in HD all over the place. I think it's PS4. I know there's a version on the Wii because there's a big mechanic in it about drawing and calligraphy to use your powers. So definitely worth your time. But some of the people, continuing to set up who Clover Studios was, who made and helped found the studio, was this guy, Shinji Mikami, which, you know, maybe the name and the face you don't really know as I decapitate my own hand. But you may know from his work, he is actually the original director on the Resident Evil series, specifically Resident Evil 1 and then later 4, which I think is pretty neat. I mean, we've been seeing now in current gaming a lot of the Resident Evil games getting re-releases, so, and knowing how big of a deal Resident Evil is at the time and all that. So this is the guy who helped direct like the first one that kind of started this whole thing. And if you're not as much familiar with those, if you're looking a little newer, he is also the director on the Evil Within series. He kind of left Capcom, which will become important later to our narrative, to kind of make those games, and those are very much in that sort of ilk of Resident Evil and stuff like that. So he is actually our main director for God Hand. which is odd, at odds with this other guy who's an important guy at Clover. And then later to our story, again, I'm sorry, everything's foreshadowing, is this guy Hideki Kamiya. We're going to talk about him a lot more later, but suffice it to say, he's kind of, even though Shinji Mikami is the director for God Hand, Kamiya's kind of work on it is going to be a lot more apparent later, with kind of where we move forward, what God Hand is, and then moving forward from God Hand, where it kind of went about. So, getting back into the game sees you playing as Gene, who is the wielder of the power of the God Hand. He's just this freaking schmuck in his 20s, beating people up in a sort of Road Warrior-esque world, but not really. It's not important. He got the God Hand from this girl, Olivia, who cut off his arm, or his arm was cut off, and gave him the God Hand and set him forth to beat demons, specifically our villains, the 4 Devas. Now, if you can count and know your numbers, I only put 3 on the screen. There is a 4th one we'll talk about later, who I think is a good introduction I'm using as the sort of style and panache and quirkiness of the series. So we'll get to him later. Their names don't super matter. I mean, God Hand is not a game about the story. God Hand is a game about its action and its style and its charm and its quirkiness. There's wonderful characters and cutscenes in it, which I will show off later, but suffice it to say, it's a game about feeling like a freaking gosh dang badass, beating people up in style, and being the hero, and all the sorts of other quirky things you come into and find. So that's kind of what you're there. And that kind of leads into one of the interesting things thinking about God Hand. God Hand is sort of a like Dead on the Vine branch of the beat 'em up genre, that I feel like it never really got followed up on, really. You know, you've got your old beat 'em ups where you move your left to right, like your Streets of Rage and your later on, like your Scott Pilgrim versus the Worlds and your Dragon's Crowns, going even newer. Just move left to right, beat people up, move on. And there's been 3D ones, and I feel like they've captured that. And I feel like God Hand is one where that branch didn't keep going. It did its own thing that is very much in that genre, and another one that wasn't around at the time that I want to get into. And then it just kind of stopped. Nobody really picked up those things. Maybe a little bit because Clover Studio closed. I don't know. So getting into more of the nitty-gritty of what makes God Hand special mechanically is what makes it really interesting is that you build your own combo. Gene doesn't wield any weapons. He is the weapon. It's a beat-em-up, but instead of just having the same punch, punch, punch combo, you get to build your own combo moves. So you're like, oh, I want the one that starts out like quick, and then, the hook. This is only the start of the game here. Like, you don't have a lot of options, but as the game goes on, you'll be able to unlock and buy more for whatever you want, and that's up to you. You can have all punches in your combo. You can have a bunch of really slow kicks and other things, because why not? Why not put that in there? That is up to you, the player, to play around with as you see fit. And that goes beside your combo to your other major buttons. So this is where you get a lot of your more special stuff that you want to bust out. Oh, we need this thing to, and you put their guard up, has a guard break, or launches them into the air as a juggle, as we see there with the heel drop, or knocks them away, or just is really slow but it deals a lot of damage, or other special effects, one of which I will touch on later, which is literally one of my favorite things in video games, bar none. But I think that's something that makes it really cool that I have not seen in a lot of other games. I want to say Remember Me does it. I barely remember that game. I have not played it, but I think that has a similar build a combo, but I don't think it's as deep as this one. And what makes this great is that it's not like you have to get it just right or you're punished. You can do whatever you want with it. The game is difficult, but not that bad. And you can play around with things and find what works for you best. And that whole continuing thing of getting more moves and figuring it out and kind of switching up stuff, it helps keep the game very varied, even though it's still the basic thing of you going around beating a lot of dudes up. So I think that's neat. So here's that little clip I had before with some of the music, which is also very fun and quirky, and you can see that combo going on, those punches, and then you can see this has this overhead sort of haymaker, and that's your guard break, and it's the whole switching up of kind of playing out, is the ending in a guard, it's moving around, it's all this sorts of fun stuff, and I think that's what makes God Hand interesting, because compared to a lot of other action games of a genre that I'm going to get into a little bit later to fill some time, is that your right stick is your dodge stick. You don't have a button for it. So like any normal action game, left or right on the stick will make you dodge left or right. Back will make you step back or backflip back. But if you do forward in place, I want to see if he'll do it all here in the video. Gene will boxer's dodge in place. And it is one of my favorite things in video games because normally you gotta be moving around, but if you can stay in place and just somebody's coming at you with like a high punch or a high kick, you just dodge in place and you're invincible the entire time as you're dodging these, and there's this nice little like noise to it, and it's just super fun and satisfying to like stand your ground and just right they're done, just get into your combo and pummel them. It's good stuff. So let's see, what do I have next? And what I really like about it is that you can get fancy with it. There's a lot of little like moves. We've seen the stomping. There's like a high kick, but there's also something that's in here is that you have the titular god hand, which there's that little glowing orangey meter right at the very bottom of the screen. So you can pop that as he's doing now, and you are invincible, and all your attacks do more damage and come out at freaking Mach 1. It's just the most exciting. I just feel big, strong out there, feeling there, I adore. And you can do fun stuff like this. You're fighting a demon of Pokegod. I wanted to show that. There's a lot of just fun, quirky stuff in the combat itself. And also is super moves called Electric. Those little 2 white dots there near the bottom UI. Just for 2. Green screen. Do crazy moves like these. And there's more than what I'm showing out here. The wonderful dragon kick your ass into the Milky Way, and the wonderful extra quirk if you use some of these in the a boss fight where characters have to come back because you have to keep fighting them. They will zoom back from the sky you've gotten delivered to Team Rocket style. There's the boss coming back where the guy didn't. And that's one of my things I love about just like weird jank, which I feel like we don't get as much anymore. We don't get as many like B-tier non-indie games. At least maybe they just don't get as much presence anymore. You can get goofy stuff in it. Here it gets our Kill Bill action with a 1-inch punch. Like a lot of fun references, and my favorite, don't act like you don't love the Ball Buster. Simple kick right to the nards, stuns them. One of the weaker moves, but like you can't not have it in there. It's super fun. There's the little doorbell ringing noise. It's great. So with all this together, we've got our kind of fighting pieces. Let's get into the more kind of charming character side stuff of like, well, yeah, the fighting is really fun and it's really satisfying, I promise you. But it's like, who are we fighting? And is it a fun time to go through there? I feel like a lot of video games, for me, is one of the things pulling me onward is to see more of the cutscenes and character moments that are entertaining and funny. So this is our 4th of our 4 devas, Elvis. You fight him first. He's a large man dressed kind of like a monk. He's got the Buddhist like prayer beads in the arm things, but he's got a big stogie. He's got a big fat belly, and he speaks like this, hombre. It's a little strong body. It's a little Spanishy, and why I don't know, but it's lovely. I love it. He's great. So I'm going to show off his first boss fight you have with him, and this is the ending of stage 1. So once you've gone through the other little levels in we'll say World 1, I guess, you come and fight Elvis, and this occurs.
Finally, a boss fight.
This little huevon is the God Hand. Oh, that's rich. A la mierda.
What's the matter? You on a tight budget, big guy?
You know what? I'm getting a bit hungry, and a little huevon sounds like it would hit the spot.
You need to feed your brain, not your ass.
I hope you fight half as good as you talk, cabron.
Find out for yourself.
Yeah! I don't think you realize what you're getting yourself into, pendejo!
Newsflash, big guy. You can wax on, wax off all you like. I'm still kicking your ass.
So he's this freaking big fat guy named Elvis, but he doesn't sound like Elvis, and he dresses like a monk, but he speaks in a Spanish accent. It's so dumb and wonderful. And the Yes Man Kablam is the move I'm going to talk about that's one of my favorite things in video games. And then this boss fight occurs. And it brings me to one of my favorite things about God Hand that I think about more coming back to it after playing another series of games, specifically Souls-like games, you know, Dark Souls or Bloodborne or any of the various imitators. But now that that's a genre, and this is of course was well before any of those games came out, and I don't want to be like, you know, everybody does the, oh, this game's so hard, it's the Dark Souls of X. But I feel like it really captures the combat ideas, even if it's a little bit more arcadey, of it's all about positioning and choice of like your moves to be prepared for situations, and like dealing with one enemy might be, you know, easy or difficult, but dealing with multiple enemies might be harder. And it's just that constant, you know, game of maneuvering and getting your hits in, getting out, or coming in with the big power moves and being able to make your choices. Like I've been playing through Bloodborne again on the second side of the quarantine, because what other time would I play a Plague game than at the time we're in a Plague quarantine? And just the whole, like, I like the halberd axe because it gives me a lot of reach and it has a nice swipe to it or something like that. Of just combat being more than just press button and make thing happen. And like, okay, we need to be smart about where we're standing, about awareness of our surroundings, about what extra powers and resources that I have in maintaining those. And I think God Hand is a fun, goofy take on that idea before it was really a thing. And I feel like it's different because of its kind of brawler roots. That it's not quite like a, we'll talk about later, games later, like Devil May Cry. Oh, more cutscene. I'll talk later. Sorry.
Get ready, cause I'm really gonna give it to you. Hey, you're the big nice hero, right? How about giving me a hand here?
Huh?
Come on, come on, come on.
Oh, I'll help you out all right.
¡A la mierda! He really gave it to me, all right.
Oh gosh, I love this moment. He's gonna leave, but he's gonna take the doorknob and close it real good, quietly. Love it.
See you around, fat boy.
Gosh, that whole fight I feel like really captures the kind of quirkiness, but also the actual like combat being deep and fun in God Hand. But I was saying like the Souls things, it's like about positioning and player choice and awareness. And as I've been playing through Bloodborne, I keep just going, gosh, I just need to turn my PS3 back on and figure out how to charge a controller so I can play through God Hand again, because I love it. I love it to pieces. It's one of my favorites. So now that we've kind of seen that, actually, you know what? Before we move on to my extra quirky thing, I want to talk about the Yes Man Kablam. So the Yes Man Kablam is a move that you don't even need to find. It is a special move that its main property, and I think it's the only move in the game that has this property, is that hitting people with it will give you God Hand meter back, which nothing else does, and you can only usually get that through either getting beat up or combat or items. So having a move that you can use, and that normally would be great, but it's not just like a straight punch or something special. It is the most slow-moving, ridiculous punch ever. So I'm going to attempt to do this with a microphone in my hand, and that Gene will very slowly and comically cock his fist back and just send it like the slowest, and then if it lands, even if it doesn't, he'll do like a taunt from it. He'll go, ha-ha, and he'll walk around. And it's the slowest, most ridiculous. Like, if you're a normal combat, you can't pull this off. But it's just that sort of level of taunt and the swagger of it and the usefulness of it that you can kind of find where to put it into your combo or your buttons. And that's what I love about this game, of just the weird stuff you can find to go, hey, you can play with that or maybe not, and the kind of fun quirkiness with it. So as we saw with Elvis, and there's a lot of kind of humor and strangeness and quirkiness to this game. It's very much like a Sentai series or like a Saturday morning cartoon, which I love that, or like an anime. But you don't always just fighting big bosses, because as you're going through the stages, you're going to fight a bunch of other weird, there's no way you could predict you'd be fighting something like this characters. And one of my favorite that I always show people to show kind of the humor of the game, that's still one of my favorite moments, is when you fight these freaking losers in a cave randomly.
Cardown Wild, Joker, One Hard Gangsta, Diamond. You can find me at the club. Have your pet neutered or spayed. Ow, 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 I'm hurt. I mean hurt. Together we are the Magnetic Pow.
Getting that beautiful Joe reference in there.
Formation.
And the displays after you've done the fight, which is admittedly really difficult because you've got 5 things that are really hard to punch running around like crazy. You're just like, what's going on? What's happening? And they just sort of roll off. And you're just like, okay. Like,
Keep on rolling.
God Hand is the kind of the B movie of it. It's wonderfully quirky and strange, but kind of rough around the edges, but that just kind of makes you love it more. At least that's how I feel about it. So, I mean, all that wraps together of like, God Hand is this beloved thing that didn't really ever get its due. And I really should have put this earlier in the presentation, but kind of one of those sticking points, even though I know it's not its fault of why it didn't do well, is this old infamous IGN review of it getting a 3 out of 10 and the reviewer calling it garbage. Because admittedly, it's not for everybody, but I think there's a lot more to it than what it looks like. Because when you boot it up, it looks like, even in 2006 at the time on the PS2, it looks really cheap. It's very janky. The camera clips through stuff all the time. And, you know, like I said, it's got its bumps, but it also has its charm, and you kind of have to be willing to open yourself up. And I don't think it's a difficult charm. It's not like a Deadly Premonition where it's like there's a lot of the quirkiness with the characters, but maybe the gameplay is like really frustrating to get through. I love the gameplay in God Hand. I think it feels really well, and once you kind of get into the intricacies of it, it plays really nicely. But also the kind of hurt for this review went further when you compare other things that got way more than a 3, like Imagine Party Babies on the Wii, but I digress. Not important. We've moved beyond that. I always think that's an interesting thing to put in, that fans of God Hand usually bring up that review, sometimes in jest, sometimes in not, depending on the type of human you're talking to. So God Hand was actually the last game Clover Studio made. And they sadly closed when a lot of their upper-end people left, including our Hideki Kamiya and Shinji Mikami, because at that time, Capcom was being really, really weird. And they're like, we need to focus more on the American market. No more original IPs. Just sequel. They got really strange. I think they've gotten better about that now. I know they still make a lot of sequels, but you can see other games and stories about Capcom being weird in like the mid to late 2000s. But the person we're going to talk about that I feel like carries on the spirit of that, or company I should say, is Platinum Games Inc. I'm sure if you know video games, you probably saw this coming. Where the seeds of Clover's death, it's like, Clover, get it, it's artistic, it's beautiful, comes the birth of Platinum Games. A large portion of its staff, one of the keys of being, not Shinji Mikami, he went out somewhere else, being Hideki Kamiya, come on to found this studio, and it very much keeps that torch burning. So like I said, we come back to Kamiya, who's really important to this. At the time before he started, or I mean at the time, but he's well known for being one of the main mans on Devil May Cry series, which again, a flashy combat action game, which still seems different than God Hand, and also very much known for blocking people on Twitter, so much so that they recently had a Kickstarter to re-release one of their games, and one of the higher levels of backing was to get blocked by Kamiya. Which is funny. It's part of a shtick, and also keeping that Resident Evil train. He is the director on Resident Evil 2, which we just recently got a big remix, remaster, whatever you want to call it. So, if you don't know Platinum Games, you might know some of their games, things like Bayonetta, Nier Automata, Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance, Mad World. I just want to throw it to footage. Here's some Mad World, and it'll switch out behind me. But when you see it and you think about those games, if you've played them, it carries on that feeling from Clover, especially between Joe and God Hand, even if gameplay-wise not as much, then ideally of, there's some Bayonetta showing it off very well, of stylish, over-the-top combat, where maybe the writing isn't as strong, but the moments and characters and the combat, the feel of it, and the freaking red-hot burning, whatever, flows through it. And you do see... Oh, here's Vanquish. This is actually with Bayonetta got an HD re-release recently. Very worth your time. I've been wanting to pick that up when it goes on sale. Vanquish is one of their more outside-the-box games for them because it's a 3D shooter, but it still keeps their level of high-octane action, which I adore. And here's Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance. But there's still that kind of through line, and kind of in the way that we saw the Mad Midget 5 and God Hand doing the big Beautiful Joe V. Like, there's still moves from Beautiful Joe in these other games still named that. The dive kick is called the red hot kick. I believe there's a move where you can dodge at just the right time and not take any damage after getting hit, and it's called the Ukemi, and that's something originally from Joe, to my knowledge, and it is extended onto these other games, even in some cases where it's not called that, but it's very clearly referencing that. And I think that's where the Heart of Clover beats on. And I hope one day they can. I'm assuming Capcom has God Hand still. I know I was really hopeful back when Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite was a thing, and hearing rumors that Jean was going to be a playable character. Like, I've been dying for it to come back in some way, shape, or form. If not a sequel, which I kind of just want the original one kind of rezzed up a little bit, that I can play it again on my more modern platform. But how am I doing on time? I'm actually good on time, so I will click throw off to leave you with our video game adventure with. Admittedly, something you could have to work for in God Hand, but I'll toss it to you for free because it's on YouTube, is the outro song to God Hand in the end credits, which is a fun time that I still think captures that sort of quirky nature. Here's Wonderful 101 on screen. That's that game that got kickstarted. And once that is done, I will be throwing it over to a best of hits of a gaming group with me and a couple of my friends called Groucho Gaming. We've got a YouTube channel. I'll see if I can get the exact name of it and shout out that when that's over. And once that's over, I believe we have Bronies Living at Home with a cooking segment. So see y'all on the other side.